Voices of Indy is brought to you by the Hoosier Original Music Association, and Humac and Visit Bloomington bring you the Songwriter Summer Series, August 13th at 7 p.m. at Sleeper's Bar. In August, they'll be featuring J.C. Clements, John Boyer, and the Delta Duo. Again, that is the Songwriter Summer Series, Tuesday, August 13th at 7 p.m., brought to you by WFHB, Visit Bloomington, and the Hoosier Original Music Association.
If I was to look back in time, I'd see all the things I would change if I could try. Learning to breathe each moment as it comes. Oh, look ahead, it's farther than I can see.
And welcome back to Voices of Indy. I am so excited to have this week's guest. His name is Joel Gragg. I have had the pleasure of opening, to a certain degree, I guess, at the Taco Bell Cantina for Joel Gragg. And I think that was like kind of a last-minute situation. Yeah. I can't remember.
That whole thing was last minute.
Tell me about it.
Yeah.
I've had the absolute pleasure of being able to hear you play a little bit. I haven't gotten the full experience of you solo or even you with the Filaments yet, but it is on my list of things to check out. And so all that is to say, I am so very excited to have you, Joel, to be on the show this week. We've been trying to get this going for a little while, haven't we?
Yeah, a couple months,
yeah.
I think. Yeah.
I think we finally got it nailed down. So first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself. You seem to be almost in the truest sense of the word a troubadour, because you've made your way through Indiana, but you've also lived elsewhere, performed elsewhere. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, we'll start off, I guess, from the beginning.
Yeah.
I'm a Hoosier through and through. I grew up in, I guess you would say, Muncie, Indiana.
Okay, yeah.
Although I went to Yorktown High School and or came up through the Yorktown system, so technically not Muncie, but Muncie enough.
Yeah, no, it's like saying, if I tell people when I used to live in Fishers, I'm from Fishers, but I'm outside Indiana, they're gonna be like, what's that from? So you just say Indianapolis.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. So grew up there, only child kind of situation. My grandmother got me involved in music when I was very, very young. She was like the church pianist and organist.
Gotcha.
And so it caught me picking out notes on the piano like after hearing something, and so went through the whole thing. Started out as mostly a singer, and then learned the piano and some theory pretty early on, and then the devil took over with the guitar at like, I don't know, 14, 15. I would say that was like the time when it was like Dave Matthews Band and Hootie and the Blowfish and all those were exploding.
The mid-90s, 94, 95,
yeah,
96.
so I was like 15, 16,
yeah,
I want to say, and it just, but what really, my dad had these, so my grandmother had all this classical music, and I was exposed to a lot of classical music growing up, sang in all state choirs coming up. Sick of choirs at the time. And my dad had these old records, Led Zeppelin, Bread, Eric Clapton, Cream,
the classics from the late 60s,
so some
70s.
70s folk, 70s rock, 60s rock, and when I started playing guitar, it was all that was going on, and I was learning all the stuff from 20, 30 years before. Yeah. And so kind of came up in that blues sort of tradition. I went to a blues summer festival in I think it was north of Chicago with a friend, and saw Buddy Guy and Eric Clapton, and I was just hooked. So did that. Wanted to go, I was going down that music route for classical voice, and went a totally different direction, and went to this little I was accepted to Belmont in Nashville, and that's where I wanted to go. That's where I wanted to go, and then my parents wanted me to go to this little Free Methodist school in Illinois, Greenville College, and there was a group of guys that came out of there called Jars of Clay.
Did you know them?
I ended up knowing. I know a couple of them.
Really?
And not one of the guys that actually was from Greenville. Well, I know Matt Bromley a little bit, who was in the band as the guitar player, and he ended up becoming a producer. He produced Plum.
Yeah,
you might know them.
Yep.
He produced one of the. Man, I am blanking on the boy band. What was the boy band? The Jonas Brothers.
Oh, okay.
One of the Jonas Brothers. He'd worked with him on like a couple solo records.
Seriously?
Yeah, and then
incredible.
He worked with Natalie Imbruglia on that Torn song.
Dude, that was a huge hit.
Yeah. So so I got to meet him, and there was another guy who he replaced Matt after Matt left the band, and he actually opened up a barbershop down the street from where I lived in Nashville.
Okay.
Huge into soccer.
Yeah.
Which now they have the soccer stadium in that area. It was near the fairgrounds.
Yeah. Now there is. Have you seen the video of? I forget this particular gentleman's name from the band, but have you seen the video of him where he talks about becoming a barber?
Yeah.
It's
a little bit.
It's an interesting little video. I don't know the guy personally. I know he's a pretty killer guitar player.
Yeah.
But
he's from upstate New York, I think.
It came across so weird.
Yeah. Well, they just got into different things, Yeah. And my ex-wife actually walked and graduated with them.
No way.
They never finished. Their degree.
Sure.
But they came back and got an honorary degree.
Of course.
The year that she was graduating. Which she graduated like a year before me.
Okay.
So, and I went to school. So at the time, there was actually a thing called CCM, Contemporary Christian Music degree.
Yeah. Oh, a degree?
A degree in it. Yes.
At Greenville?
Yes. So thank God that changed, because I did not want to leave that place with.
I'm sorry.
No, you're dead on, man. You're dead on. What's funny
is they teach is the whole thing to teach you to write formulaic music that everyone.
I guess really what it was commercial music, but they in their wisdom thought oh, this will sell.
Sure. Yeah, it was a marketing ploy.
Yes, and yeah. So this is late '90s, early aughts.
Yeah.
So and it changed, and the guy, actually one of the guys who came in after the initial guy who started that program, he came from University of Miami in Florida, and he teaches at Berkeley now.
Oh, all right.
So he made sure that it was we can't have people graduating with this
degree
for a degree. So it changed to commercial music, and I don't even know what it is now. So actually Greenville is a university now. I guess
it changed.
Yeah,
they've expanded
somewhere down the road it did.
Yeah.
So did that. I focused in audio primarily, so graduated with a degree in commercial music and a minor in communications. But I went to Nashville, as one does, and I ended up working at first interning at a recording studio down there called Dark Horse in Franklin, and then I ended up working there for a bit. Then I ended up on the road as I guess you'd call it hired gun. Guitar player for a few years. There was this band from Baltimore that I ended up playing with a bit. They had a contract with World Vision, and they were shopping deals. And so their guitar player decided to stay back in Baltimore and work at the church. I guess he was the music minister there. Very big church. And security money.
Sure.
He was a family guy. The other guys didn't have a family. And
a little bit more freedom.
Yeah. So worked with those guys for a bit and got to, went on the road with acts like Third Day, stuff like that.
Wow.
And this is probably, early odds, 2003, 4, 5 in there.
Oh, that's when they were in their heyday.
Yeah. So, did that for a while. And then back in Nashville, I was more into the Americana thing.
Okay,
That's what
yeah.
I wanted to do,
Yeah.
but this was like, it wasn't like I made a great living, but it was like it was how I paid the bills.
Yeah.
So I did that for a while, and then worked with some producers in town.
Out of curiosity, did you ever work with, or do you know Phil Madeira?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you? Did you work on any of his? He put out with a guy I know. He was just financially producing it, but they were Americana EPs that kind of came out here within the last 10 years. Like he has about 3 of them. Were you involved in that project at all?
What's the guy? Phil himself?
Phil actually put the whole thing together. But my friend financially
okay. Well, yeah. So I didn't play on any of Phil's stuff.
Okay.
But he
brought in other Americana artists, so I was kind of curious.
So so I knew about Phil all the way back to. I mean, I was the type of nerdy music kid that I was into Phil Keaggy.
Oh, dude, yeah.
And so he had this album called Crimson and Blue. And this is right around the time I was picking up guitar. And, if you're in these, nobody outside of these circles would know.
No,
but
that's sad because, I mean, here's the thing. Phil Keaggy, objectively, is one of the world's greatest guitar players.
Yeah.
I mean, you strip away any labeling on him, the dude is amazing.
Yep. And Phil was in his band as his keys player for years and years. But I'd read the liner notes and I saw Phil Madeira and these type of names on that. So I went to the guy who'd started that program that I initially was talking about, Warren Pettit. He started a program out on the East Coast, and I was in its second semester. It was a place called Contemporary Music Center on Martha's Vineyard, and it's no longer there. It's in Brentwood, Tennessee now. But we went on after I'd already been in Nashville, and they came to visit Nashville instead of New York and Boston, where I went when I was out there. We went to Providence Recording Group, which is there in Franklin, and Phil was there, and they played one of my songs.
No way.
Yeah, and Phil was listening and gave me his card.
That is awesome.
So. Yeah, I mean, nothing really ever came from it. Beyond that, I'd see him occasionally and stuff, but he was like, I like the song, and let's talk and that kind of thing, and just whatever. It just never matriculated.
Sure.
So,
and I know we're talking about names that people are like, who's this? Do I really even care about this? But I mean, these are truly.
So Phil Madeira, he also plays. If you know the names like Emmylou Harris, he plays in her band. Emmylou Harris, in country music,
the Red Dirt Boys, I believe is.
Yeah, well, she had that Red Dirt album.
Yeah,
and she's done albums with what's all the road running with Mark Knopfler, who's one of my favorite guitar players of all time, and she's just been like a darling in the folk and country and before whatever you call Americana now. And to be honest with you, I think that name is just kind of it's just a name. Now it's mostly, if you go to East Nashville, it's like girls wearing their Fleetwood Mac hat, but there's really no substance to it anymore. But I remember like when it was starting, with guys like Buddy Miller and Jim Lauderdale, stuff like that. So, and Phil was always Phil also played with Buddy. Are you familiar with Buddy?
I'm familiar enough.
Okay, cool.
Enough to know the name.
Yeah, great musician, songwriter, producer. I mean, he's worked with like Solomon Burke.
Oh wow!
Yeah, he did his one of his last albums.
Really?
And I got to see Solomon at one of the first Americana music fests.
No way.
Yeah. So and that's in Seoul, because again, that's a name probably a lot of people aren't going to know unless they do some homework. So yeah, did that whole thing. Ended up moving back to Indiana. And I was going to move back to Nashville, but I had interviewed for this company in Fort Wayne, and I took this really long test that like I had worked in studios professionally, and this test was written so hard. I don't think they give this test anymore, but it's like a 2-hour test. And I was in Nashville, and like, oh yeah, I'm going to be moving back. I'm going to be moving back this summer, and got a call. Hey, you got the job. And okay, I guess I'll do it.
Okay, so I have to ask, because I honestly think this is probably a very difficult decision for musicians.
Yeah.
For normal people, probably not. But for musicians, this is honestly a tough call. Do you stay in Fort Wayne, Indiana, but you're working at Sweetwater? Or do you move to Nashville?
Yeah. Well...
And for musicians, that's a tough call.
It's a to each their own. Everything in life is a choose your own adventure to some aspect.
So what was your adventure?
So what was going on in my head is I was married. Now I'm no longer, we were married as, we were very young. I was too young. And that's part of the other thing with going to a Christian college is you hook up with somebody and a lot of things we should have asked each other before that happened that we never did. So a lot of that time in Nashville she spent there while I was out on the road or late night in studios, and I can understand where she's coming from. She's a musician as well. Okay. And so we had an apartment fire, and that was like sort of where the straw that broke the camel's back. We made the decision. And also my grandmother, who was the one who got me into music, was having major health issues at the time. Wow. And so we decided like we would move in with my grandmother, like she could go back to school. That was the tenet anyway, or the idea of what we do. And so I made the choice out of responsibility to do that. And so that didn't end up working out so well. My grandmother ended up living with my parents. She had a stroke, so she was kind of dealing with stuff. Like, and anybody who has had family that's had a stroke, it's like, I mean, personalities change. Yeah, they do. And like this is the person, that kind of like secondhand raised me. So I knew her pretty well, and I was seeing things exhibited that like I have never seen this person ever. So there was a lot of that, and that also spurred like, hey, I want to move back. This was a mistake, ended up going to Fort Wayne instead, and it was a good time. I learned a lot. I think I had more of an idea I'd do this for a couple of years, and then I split, and that ended up turning into 5 years. Something like 2008 happened, if people remember that. And
painfully, I remember 2008. Yes.
Yeah, and I was in a job in sales for audio gear, and but I had a job, and other people were losing theirs. So yeah, I ended up staying longer. But yeah, it was a good time. I still have some very, very close friends. Actually working on a record. I released a single last week with a friend who I started with, and he came from. He's a Midwestern guy himself. He's from Ohio, but he'd worked in L.A. for a long time as an audio engineer, and was very, very good. So yeah, I mean, I keep in touch. And one of my best man at my wedding when I got remarried, Sweetwater guy that I worked with, So it was a good time, but left that. Thought I wanted to teach. So finished a music technology degree from my APUI. Went down to Nashville again, did the studio thing again, and then also did like computer work with because I worked for Yamaha after Sweetwater. I forgot that part. For a few years, even though I worked at Sweetwater, I was never great. Like, hey, I do music too. I just did my work, and and Nashville's I'll tell anybody thinking about it, it's like, know what you want to do, because if you don't, Nashville will relegate you to where it wants you. You have to be very, very focused. Any city like that, where there's a music industry, which, I mean, what even is that nowadays?
Right.
The music industry that, I was growing or thought I was going into changed maybe 5 times.
Yeah, especially since 2000, since Napster. I mean, the music industry has been trying to figure itself out, and it's constantly evolving.
Yeah, when I started working at Dark Horse, the guy who owned it was talking about selling it then and there. Now they've made it into kind of a like Blackbird Academy, which I got to know some people there. But yeah, it's my point. Just know what you want to do. I think I do now at 40. But it took some time. So, so did the Sweetwater thing. Went back to Nashville. Came back, and did the Yamaha thing again, and went back for the final time. It was an eye-opening experience, and it was kind of the one that made me decide, like, I think I just want to work on music myself, and I'll do something more like IT, you know, a little bit more like,
If I was to look back in time, I'd see all the things I would change if I could try. Learning to breathe each moment as it comes. Oh, look ahead, it's farther than I can see. This was the moment I'd waited my whole life for, but I recognized it when it came. But I walk away too scared to realize, thinking, oh, it's farther than I can see. Well, I hope I take it all by the reins, rise above those vistas once to see it clear and see it clear. But for now, it all seems out of reach, off in the distance, farther than I can see. Well, I hope I take it all by the reins, rise above those vistas once to see it clear and see it plain. Well, tonight I'm looking at the stars, the stars that seem different but similar at times. Nobody can know the future, it would seem. I'll say for one, it's farther than I can see. Oh, for now, it's farther than I can see.
guaranteed money.
Let's talk about the music a bit. What has you're more of a blues guy, right?
I kind of came up through the blues, and so I remember when people talk about like guys like John Mayer and people like that. Like, I have to admit, at first, when Room for Squares came out, I wasn't really into it, But then as it kind of came on, I think the one I just absolutely could not deny, what was that album? Continuum.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And then, obviously, the live album. And it's like, to deny a guy like that's like to deny, like, a guy like me, because I grew up in, white suburban kid, or rural kid or whatever, and listening to this traditional music. Yeah. And just because, like, it pulled my heart, it tugged at me.
Yeah.
And so, I came up that way. Now, there's been tons of other, like, lots of folk rock, indie music, Americana, if you want to call it that. There's been a lot of other influences. And so I would say whatever I do kind of has a lens through that, but I would not.
You're not strictly.
I'm not strictly blues.
Yeah.
I have friends that, man, they are pros. They tour the world, and that's what they do.
Yeah.
And they'll play blues clubs all over Kingdom Come, and they're so good at it. And so I am not knocking that at all.
Oh no, I don't think that you are.
Not that you would think that either, but it's kind of the same concept with jazz, or even folk. I remember the first time going to a Folk Alliance anything, and just being like, at first, I was like, oh, so these are the guys that wanted to shoot Bob Dylan when he pulled out an electric guitar. Because I'm just as comfortable with an electric guitar as I am an acoustic instrument. I see the need and the purpose of both. And that's since changed. Like, Folk Alliance is very, very broad now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of that same thing, like with jazz. Like, well, are we talking bebop, or what are we talking here?
Yeah.
And there's certain people that are like, well, I don't. It shouldn't have changed since then. And they don't want to have any part of free jazz or acid jazz or anything like that.
But that's the whole point of jazz, though, which is crazy.
Exactly. And blues is just, to me, it's not. It is a form. I don't want to say it's not, but it is also a feeling.
Yeah.
And so I look at a band like, this is an older band, but still it applies, like ZZ Top.
Yeah.
They are not a traditional blues band, but they are kind of like looked at that way sometimes.
Really?
By some people.
Okay.
But they're blues adjacent, and that's what I would.
Yes.
And there actually is a progressive blues genre.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'd probably say. Like with the Filaments,
it's like the Texas blues or something. But
with the Filaments, we embrace funk, soul, blues, rock. It just is three guys. The bass player. When he was coming up, both guys in the band are a little bit older than me.
Who are the guys in your band?
Okay, so
tell us about the Filaments real quick.
So the Filaments came about. I was living in Springfield, Illinois. We moved from Nashville during the pandemic. Weird time to move anywhere. And for that first year, there was no live music in Illinois. Yeah. So what I was doing, I actually was playing in a traditional blues band, lead guitar, in St. Louis. A friend knew somebody who needed a guitar player because, their guitar player was older and did not want to expose himself.
Sure, understand. Yeah.
So I did that for the better part of a year. Which was great. It got me back out there playing, and then things started opening up in like 2002, and so I started playing in Springfield, and that kind of quickly took off from playing solo gigs here throughout town there. Stephanie had got a job. She had worked at the Country Music Hall of Fame, and during the pandemic they'd laid off like 60% of their staff with no guarantee of it coming back. And so, but she already got an offer to start the store at the Illinois State Museum, which they had closed down for a time because Illinois had some issues with money. They
kind of do.
Well, I think they're doing better now, but anyway, it did open up, and she did do that. And so that's what moved us there. And of course, I'm like, why would I ever want to move to Springfield, Illinois? Like, and I went to Greenville College, and it's like I always went to St. Louis. But that was the one selling factor, was that it was near enough, because I really liked St. Louis and have an attachment to it. But so I was finishing up a record that I had started in Nashville, or had gone down to track the rhythm section with at a friend's studio in East Nashville. With a drummer and bassist, and so I finished that record. It's called Promise of Light. I released it in 2001. So that's when things started opening up. And so I was putting together a release show, and a friend of mine had introduced me to this drummer. He knew a long time, Jamie Perryman, who lives in St. Louis, and so we got together a couple of times, and it was just one of those things where it's just, the wavelength. And then so I went through a few bass players, and it just wasn't really clicking. And everyone kept saying, "Oh, you should like this guy Bruce Williams. You should really give this guy a call." And so Bruce is kind of like a local hero in that town. He was in a band, and why I'm blanking at the moment, it'll come to me. Anyway, he was in a band that was kind of punk rap oriented, like the 90s. And it was his brother and himself, and drummer, another guitar player. And he's gonna kill me for forgetting this name. No, actually not. Bruce is like as close to, and this is an old reference and even older than my generation, but like if you think of Sean Penn's character in Fast Times at Ridgemont, like this is Bruce.
Okay.
He is the most laid back character. And it was almost on the tip of my tongue. But anyway, his band did have kind of an almost famous moment. I mean, they had toured, like they had done the Whiskey, and they'd gone,
very
New
cool.
York, and all the famous punk places. They played Indy a bunch in the 90s and early aughts. And then they kind of, I think around 2001, they kind of gave it a rest.
Gotcha.
But God, why can't I think of that name? It'll come to me at some point, and we'll fulfill it. But so, if you've seen the movie High Fidelity,
oh yes, I love that movie. It is, to borrow from that movie, one of my top 5 favorite movies.
Okay,
I even read the book. The book and the movie are, outside of a different location, almost identical.
Yeah,
that's how beautiful that movie is.
Yeah. So there's a scene in the record store where right on the back of John Cusack's office there, he's got all these stickers on his door, and the sticker of his band's right next to one.
No way!
Yeah.
That is so cool.
Yep. So and so Bruce, I gave him a call. We got together for one rehearsal, and then we played the show the next night. And there was a guitar player too, but what ended up happening is he ended up having trouble with his pedal board.
Oh no!
And so he spent most of the show messing with that.
No.
Well, we just played, and we had a great time, and we were just like looking at each other like, "Are you guys feeling this?" And so suffice it to say is like, Jamie came from like, I think he played for a label that was like famous for like industrial metal.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I mean, we don't sound anything like that.
No,
but I'm all this to say is like we all come from different musical backgrounds.
Yeah.
But yet we all like. But Jamie's also like a huge Peter Gabriel, Phil Collins fan.
Yeah.
And a lot of the drummers for Phil. He's very much into that. He's actually been staying with a jazz guy for like the past year or so, which is like, because I remember at first he's like, I'm a rock drummer. It's like, if you want a bunch of shuffles and stuff, like I'm not your guy, because living in St. Louis, it's kind of another pseudo famous blues town, and so and I wasn't really writing a lot of shuffles, so
yeah.
But now he's like, So we've been playing together roughly for a little over 2 years, and then of course my wife gets the job offer, which is a dream situation for her. So now we live in 3 different states.
Oh wow!
What we do is we'll go rehearse in St. Louis at a particular place, and that'll be like the set for like this summer. So we're playing festivals, like we play a festival next Saturday, a Down Home Fest in Springfield. Hopefully, a couple thousand people.
Yeah.
Be a good time. But, this is what we do. And we're going to come back in the fall and in October and play we're playing Bloomington. And we're going to do the Fountain Square Brewery.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're doing that. And we've got another band from Decatur, Illinois that are going to come for that gig as well. But, it was just... we just really love playing with each other, and I know you've played in bands, and when we say we're going to do something, or I want to ask, like, hey, can we do this date? Either they can or they can't, but if they say yes, they're just the most reliable guys. And we just get to work. We just know how to get to work, but we have fun and enjoy it. And we're working on an album, should be released before the end of the year, and it's best thing I've been a part of.
That is awesome.
As far as for my own music.
Yeah, no, that has to be such a good feeling.
Oh yeah, and
I mean, especially since you've been a part of so many different scenes, from different cities and in different, like, literal genre, different scenes, and working on your own music and even releasing stuff on your own, but to have something that you can point to and be like, I'm freaking proud of this.
Yeah. Annihilate. That's the name of the band.
Oh!
So
timing.
Yeah, NIL8.
Annihilate.
Yeah. So, I mean, I lived in Springfield for a few years before moving back, and it's like, man, like, it's just, I don't know what you compare it to, like here, but maybe like the Zero Boys an indie band, right? Indie punk.
Think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
And I used to know Paul a little bit.
Okay.
From my time, I lived a year in Bloomington, in between the Indianapolis and Fort Wayne thing, kind of like that, where on the cusp of greatness,
Yeah.
They were actually talking to the same labels that ended up signing Rage.
No way.
They weren't that off.
Wow.
From that kind of a thing. So.
Wow.
I mean, obviously not all the political stuff.
Sure.
But from a musical aspect.
Yeah.
I mean, not far.
Not far.
So. But yeah, so that's the Filaments thing. We've had some really great opportunities. We opened for Reverend Peyton last year.
Nice.
For Labor Day weekend.
Yeah.
Which it was in Illinois, but it was like I was proud that we got that done, and it was like Indiana representing. So that was a good time, and it was like 400 people there.
Nice.
That. Yeah.
When is, just to kind of track it back a bit, for people who may want to put it on their calendars, when is the Fountain Square gig?
Fountain Square gig, I want to say it is October 11th.
Okay.
Yeah, October 11th. It's a Friday. Because we're doing a Thursday in Bloomington at the Blockhouse.
Yes. Okay, yeah.
I love playing with those guys, and, even though it takes a bit of effort, because we're not immediately right there with one another, it's still worth it and rewarding. And we got merch being done with Natalie Mark and
nice.
Courtney, I'm forgetting her last name, but who works with Natalie in Smash. She did our logo. Yeah,
that is an incredible logo.
Which well thank you, Courtney.
Yeah, thank you, Courtney. Yeah, that was a great logo, Courtney.
Yeah. I mean, we just like, it's shake and bake. I helped.
Yeah.
I just put in some ideas like, hey, could we do a tube instead of a light bulb? But but that's the Filaments, and then I do solo stuff, and it's been very productive. Went from basically up until the beginning of last year when we met at the Taco Bell Cantina, and it just kind of blew up.
Yeah. No, seriously, you kind of like, I felt like you kind of came out of nowhere.
That's the story of my life, you know.
But I mean, the talent is there for you to come out of nowhere. I mean,
well, I appreciate
so that. I mean, honestly, it's one of those things that when I heard you playing at the cantina, I'm like, what is this guy doing at the cantina?
Yeah.
I mean, this doesn't belong here. I mean, and it wasn't even the style of music. It was just like, you know, when you hear something, you're like, you deserve better than this.
Well, I appreciate that. You know, but you know, we do, because I'm sure we've all crossed that thing. You know? Anybody that's like, and let you know, what is making it? You know, I don't even know anymore.
Right.
That's up to you. But I mean, you know, I know for me, I crossed that threshold of like, do I want to do this or do I not? And I just know that I'm not a happy person when I don't do music.
Yeah.
You know, in some way. So, and that's writing it. Now, you know, when I was a kid, I was just as into visual art as I was music. And that some sort of, you know, across the line, like changed. I kind of want to get back to visual art, you know, just for
interesting,
just for like nothing but the pure pleasure of it. You know, there's no skin in the game, but like, yeah, that's one of my things to do when I like to chill and decompress. Is I'll put on like Bob Ross, you know,
nice,
on like Netflix. I think it's on Netflix.
It is,
and just vibe.
Just watch some happy little clouds, man.
Yeah, man. And you know, in this world, especially now,
right?
Like, it's much needed.
It is so needed. Yeah. You mentioned before we started, like it sounded like you had, and this isn't to float my own boat or anything, but I want to kind of get your story.
Sure.
Just because I'm interested. You felt like you had a connection to what I'm working on with my album.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've seen a couple of your posts on social media about that. So yeah, I grew up in the church. And then I went, you know, it's hard to like even know like where was my mind thinking about that when I was, I don't know, 17 or 16.
Yeah.
But I at one point in time, like, and where I was, because I just went to the public school system, I thought I wanted to go to like private school that was a Christian school, and then I actually did. And then I'm like, look, I don't want to like just bash these institutions.
Yeah.
But I just saw things from my idealism at the time that didn't really vibe with my idealism at the time.
Sure.
And I'm not right or wrong. It just is. I made it's all bogus then.
Yeah.
You know, if like you say this and then do this other blatantly and over again, like how can just be who you are?
Yeah.
And that's what I would. That's what I would say about anything, and that goes like when I was kind of like working in Christian music, you know, as just a hired guitar player, doing the Coldplay U2 thing at some mega church somewhere in Texas.
Oh gosh,
you know,
I'm sorry.
Hey, that's what you had to do.
I know you did, and I have to apologize on behalf of an entire industry that totally would not apologize for this.
No.
But really, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and so, yeah, like I said, I'm not trying to bash, because like there were good things. You know, I met a lot of people in my life that, are still somewhat a part of my life from those days, but it really questioned my faith. You know, and I was like, of all places, going to a Christian school, like, yeah,
I know that honestly doesn't surprise me.
Yeah,
I mean, it's simply because. And this isn't to like completely derail the conversation into some theological discussion, but I mean, you know, I spent 13 years in parochial school, and I remember people saying that, you know, the place where I graduated from was just basically a Christian public school.
Yeah,
you know. Now I wasn't exposed to all the things that some of the people were doing, and I'm not even necessarily sure those people would call themselves Christians who were, you know, caught up in some of those things. But to go to those places, you have to sign a document. I don't know if you did at Greenville, but I mean, I
think I did, actually.
Yeah, just like some sort of profession of faith.
Yeah.
Which also seems bogus to me. To have to do something like that, but I mean, it doesn't necessarily surprise me, because you have people who are told for so long that they can't do something, then they're finally away on their own, and then they figure out what they can do, and it completely reshapes and reforms how they approach things. The big catalyst for my change was actually listening to the Bible apart from the church, apart from anything else. I was alone in my car on my way to work, and you just start hearing things, and you're like, this doesn't line up with what I see. This doesn't line up with what people who preach this stuff say.
Right.
And I'm like, and if this is supposed to be the truth, then I don't hold this in disregard. I hold the people who are saying it in disregard.
Right.
And so that I know for some people it will completely demolish their faith. And I get that. I totally get that. I am not questioning that whatsoever. If that happens to you, that's what happens. But to me, if anything, it's strengthened my faith and my resolve. And honestly, to the greatest degree, that's where my first album was born. I was working in politics, and to hear this and then to see that was like, these are two completely different worlds. That say they're on the same side, but if you truly stacked up what this is saying up against that, then they have nothing to do with each other. And so that's what radically changed my political. So I didn't go through a spiritual deconstruction. I went through a political deconstruction. And then what I'm working on now is just like, I don't know if it was an extension of the political deconstruction or anything, but I mean, it is ultimately, and I think this is something that you probably go for in your music, is that you're searching for truth. And so that's kind of what it's come down to, is like, when people will say that you can't feel a certain way because, that's not what, that's what the church says you can't. I mean, like, well, funny enough, if I go back to scripture, I'm seeing depression. I'm seeing questioning religion. I am seeing doubt. I'm seeing faith. I'm seeing all these things. But it's all there. And it's all by people who are so-called heroes of the Bible. And I'm like, if it worked for them, not worked. But I know. But I mean, but if it happened to them, then it's a real valid feeling. And that's what I've been pushing towards with what I've been working on.
That's awesome, man. So I would say the reason I still consider myself a person of faith probably are due in part to a few influences. Brennan Manning, are you familiar?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So the Ragamuffin Gospel, and he had another book, Abba's Child. But I was at Greenville, and this was like, so I was off pretty much any chance I could get. I was off in St. Louis, either playing music or listening to music. Doing all the things on that little document that I signed that were not on of that.
Exactly. Yes.
And this was like, I think Ike Turner's old bass player used to play in the house band at this place called BB's Jazz and Blues.
That's so
in
cool.
Soulard, which is Soulard. If you know St. Louis music history, Soulard's like a very, very famous area for that.
Okay.
So any chance I could, because it was like a 45-minute drive from there, because Greenville was like really, I mean, there wasn't much to it.
I was gonna say, it's probably in the middle of nowhere.
It's a dry county.
Of course.
There's the college, and then there's the town, and it's very like Stars Holler, kind of Stars Hollow from whatever Gilmore Girls you want to like. It's kind of that kind of deal.
Yeah.
But that's about it. And at the time, the townies did not like the college students.
Sure.
For I would say obvious reasons. Mostly, but yeah. So, but I got so. When I was in high school, Rich Mullins, like his music was one that even to this day I'll still occasionally I'll put on.
I love Rich Mullins.
Liturgy, Legacy, of Ragamuffin Gospel.
Yes,
and then the record he had made before he died,
the Jesus album.
Yeah, just listen to the demo tapes.
Yeah,
God love them.
I know they tried their best, but and it was overproduced.
Yeah, but songs like Hard to Get, just like rip you a new one.
No, they do.
Emotionally. And
he was such a fantastic writer.
Uh-huh.
And a tremendous musician. And it was if we could have had his voice today.
Well, Phil Madeira, going back to Phil, was a part of that project. Guys like Rick Elias, who he unfortunately passed away a few years ago from cancer, and Rick, he was he wrote all the not all the music, but he was a big part of the music for That Thing You Do, the Tom Hanks movie.
Yeah,
but I got to know Rick a little bit when in my time there, and I met Rich once when I was in high school. My church went to do a missionary in Window Rock, Arizona, which is the capital of the Navajo Nation.
Yes.
So at the time,
that's where Rich was living, right?
Yeah, he moved from Kansas and moved out there, and he had lived in a trailer. So I literally saw him. He came out and did some worship music with us.
Okay. Was he barefoot?
Guitar. I can't remember. Probably.
That's what
I know he wasn't wearing Timberlands.
Yeah, he was. He truly was salt of the earth. I mean, he's a guy who had the dirty feet, and he may wash for a church show, but for the most part, he was a man of the earth who occasionally loved to have a cigarette or two.
Oh yeah. Some of the stories I've heard, and then I'd seen him in concert a few other times with everybody else with this band, and incredible musician. He's the type of musician that didn't matter. He happened to be in Christian music, but he could have done anything.
Exactly,
anything.
Honestly, that's when I think Life Liturgy album I can keep on going back to that because it stands up against anything.
Yeah.
It truly does. Even with the random Christmas song in there.
Yep. Which still, but yeah, so through him, I found the works of Brennan Manning, and, just that, we are who we are. We have all the things that we go through. There's songs of Rich that, oh gosh, I remember there's this blues song that I heard. I want to say Get Him Home, but it's not him. Boom 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 Boom, the guy from Detroit, John Lee Hooker.
John Lee Hooker. Okay,
has a song. I Never Get Out of These Blues Alive, and Rich has some. A lot of his songs deal with none of us are getting out of here alive, but it's we come with what we are, our imperfections. And I guess from a faith perspective, to just have that realization that we are flawed, quit trying to put on these airs.
Yeah.
Be who you are, be honest, and that's where I come from my faith, and I may have some lyric here and there that you might pick up on or glean on that has that in it, but it's never it's just because it's who I am.
Yeah, it's part of you. You got to be who you are.
Nothing else other than that. So, but yeah, so those influences there are the reason I have any faith. I don't even really go to church anymore, but yeah,
that's amazing. Well, Joel, we have Joel.
Hey,
I know your name.
Been called worse.
This has been fantastic. I have enjoyed this conversation so very much.
Me too.
And I want to ask you what, for all of your experiences, what is one piece of advice that you would give someone who is wanting to get into the business, or who is just getting started writing music? For someone who's been around so many different people and around so many different styles of music.
Yeah. Wow.
Put you on the spot here.
No, I appreciate the question for sure. I would say, be true to who you are. Like, especially in social media. I don't know. So, like, I mean, we lived without it, you and I, but live with it day-to-day basis. But as a young person, coming up and writing songs, you have so much of the world that we didn't even have access to, just right at your disposal. And at on one hand, I think almost having this vast amount of information somewhat limits people, which it's I don't know, there needs to be some studies on that.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of convinced that's the case.
Yeah.
But like, so what I would say is be true to what you want to do. Listen to a lot of music. Like if you like a certain thing, broaden yourself. Like, listen to other things. Even the things you think you might not like. Get out and play with people. I learned the most playing with people that were far better than me. And I've had I've had the opportunity to play with some killers, and it kind of like, you was like, well, what do I do? It's like, I guess I just need to practice, or
yeah,
give it up,
Yeah.
It's like, and that wasn't that was not the alternative for me personally, but just and just find you, be the best you, and don't compare. Like that comparison, I've heard this several times before, is the thief of joy. You don't compare yourself to anybody else. I mean, there's some people I know that one of my favorite guitar players, this guy Jim LeBlanc. He's also equally as good a drummer. Played drums for Paul Simon. I've had some lessons with the guy on guitar, and he's played with Lucinda Williams, and it's just a badass. But it's just, and he would tell you the same. It's just, you have to be the best you.
Yeah.
Just be the best you. So
that's some great advice. That's some great advice. Ladies and gentlemen, Joel Gragg. Check him out October 11th at Fountain Square Brew Company. And before that, if you're in Bloomington, check him out at the Blockhouse, also in October, with the Filaments. Which will be fun. Anything else you want to plug real quick before?
Yeah, I have joelgraggmusic.com. I'm on Facebook, on Instagram at jmgragg. It's just Joel Gragg on Facebook. I have Joel Gragg Music on Facebook as well as my music page. And I post any chance I can, any shows here locally in Indianapolis. Or nearby, and I appreciate it.
Yeah,
and
you're welcome.
Thank you for having me, Josh.
Oh, you're welcome. This has been an absolute pleasure, and it's fun to get to talk to somebody who I kind of know a little bit about what they're talking about, even though the vast majority of people who may be watching don't.
Yeah, right.
So it's a lot of fun.
Oh, and I do have a single that got released last Friday.
Oh yes, definitely.
Farther Than I Can See, and So
is that just you, or is that with
that's
the
just
Filaments?
me?
Okay,
that's
all right.
not the Filaments. That we've got a whole album coming out later this year.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. Joel is going to play us out. And if you can, check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/voicesofindie. There are a bunch of different tier options that you can check out. Please support the channel. Like and subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. Give us a follow if you're listening on Spotify. Joel Gragg, thank you once again for being on the show.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you guys again next week. Bye.
They say everything, it happens for a reason, And sometimes it's hard to know exactly why. Well, I'm calling you tonight to say I'm sorry, 'cause you know I hate to hear you cry. Yeah, it's the miles between dissonant harmony. I'm reaching to you in need out here along the miles between. I remember on the nights we talked for hours. We were wild, we were free of space and time. But now silence is the blade that cuts asunder. You hear me screaming from a well down deep inside. Yeah, it's the miles between truth and the lies we speak. I'm begging you, baby, please, out here along the miles between. There's not much left to say as each white line keeps passing by. A slow parade of memories reminding me it don't get easier with time. Ooh, 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 ooh. And no matter what happens to us, baby, if one day you go your way and I go mine, my love for you will burn on down the road ahead. You will never leave the solace of my mind. Yeah, it's the miles between faith and our disbelief. Somewhere we will find our dreams out here along the miles between, out here along the miles between.